Daniel Reed knew something was wrong the second he stepped into the dining room. The table was already set, real candles, heavy silver, a roast steaming at the center like it belonged in a magazine. At the far end sat two people who did not smile when they looked at him. And beside him, gripping his hand just tight enough to hurt, stood his boss. "Mom, Dad," Olivia Sterling said calmly. "This is Daniel. He's my boyfriend." The word landed like a gunshot in a quiet church. Daniel felt every eye in the room measure him. His boots, his jacket, the calluses on his hands. He hadn't come here for this. He had come to mount a shelf. So why was he sitting at the head of a war table instead? 2 hours earlier, he had been closing spreadsheets at Sterling Holdings in downtown Denver when his phone buzzed. Need help with a shelf. It was from Olivia. She ran half the company. Sharp suits, sharp mind. She could quiet a boardroom without raising her voice. Daniel built models for infrastructure deals. On weekends, he built tables in his small apartment near 5 Points. That was the mistake. He'd once shown a photo of a walnut desk he'd made. Now she remembered. He almost said no. Then she added, "I'll owe you." He should have known better. Her townhouse wasn't a high-rise like people assumed. It sat on a quiet street, lined with brick and iron railings. Snow dusted the steps. The sky hung low and gray. She opened the door before he knocked. Barefoot, dark jeans, soft sweater, hair down. He'd never seen her like that. "Where's the shelf?" he asked. "Inside," she said. Her voice was steady. Her eyes were not. The smell hit him first. Butter. Rosemary. Something roasting. Then voices. Older. Confident. He stopped just past the door. "You didn't say you had company." Quote. Her fingers brushed his sleeve. "If I had," she whispered, "you wouldn't have come." Before he could ask what that meant, a woman's voice called from the dining room. "Olivia, honey, your father's waiting." Her grip tightened. "Please," she murmured, "just walk with me." He should have left. Instead, he followed. Now he was seated beside her, napkin folded across his lap like he belonged there. Her father studied him first. Charles Sterling, founder, silver hair, the kind of man who built things and expected them to stay built. Her mother, Margaret, wore a polite smile that did not reach her eyes. "How long have you two been seeing each other?" Margaret asked. Olivia didn't blink. "Long enough." Under the table, her knee pressed against his, not romantic. Anchoring. Daniel could end this with one sentence. He didn't. "Senior analyst," Charles said, looking at him. "Infrastructure division, correct?" "Yes, sir." "You built the Horizon Transit model." "I did." Charles nodded once. "Solid work." That surprised him. Margaret poured him wine without asking. "Olivia doesn't usually bring men from work home," she said lightly. Olivia's jaw tightened just slightly. Daniel understood then. This wasn't about him. This was about someone else. "Marcus was supposed to join us tonight," Margaret added. There it was, Marcus Hale, senior partner. Polished smile, too comfortable around Olivia. Olivia lifted her chin. "Marcus is a colleague," she said evenly. "Daniel is my boyfriend." She said it again, stronger. Daniel felt the shift in the room. This wasn't dinner, this was a declaration. Questions came slow and smooth. Where did he grow up? Kansas. What did his parents do? His dad ran a freight route. His mom taught 3rd grade. "So you're the first in finance," Charles said. "Yes, sir." "A big step." "It is." Margaret smiled gently. "And your long-term intentions with our daughter?" There it was, the blade wrapped in silk. Olivia went still beside him. Daniel looked at Charles. Then at Olivia. Her eyes met his. "Help me." Not spoken. Clear. He took a breath. "My plan," he said slowly, "is to make sure Olivia has choices." Quote. Charles frowned slightly. "Choices for what?" Before Daniel could answer, Olivia stood. "Dad, can I steal him for a moment?" She didn't wait. She pulled Daniel into the hallway and into a small pantry lined with dark wood shelves. The door shut. The house went quiet. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. Her voice wasn't sharp now, it was strained. "I know this is wrong." "Start explaining," Daniel said calmly. She pulled a folded document from her sweater pocket and pressed it into his hand. "They expect me to announce an engagement to Marcus at the Winter Gala," she said. Daniel blinked. "What?" "If I don't," she continued, "I lose my voting control. My shares go into a joint trust, managed by my father and Marcus." The word sat heavy between them. "That's not legal." "It's written into the merger structure," she said. "Buried, clean, technical." "And you thought pretending to date me would fix that?" "I needed something real enough to disrupt their timeline," she said. "If I show up publicly with someone else, they can't force the narrative." He stared at her. "You could lose everything," he said. "I already am," she replied quietly. There was no boss in her voice now, just a daughter backed into a corner. "You can walk away," she added. "If you leave now, I won't stop you." Daniel looked down at the paper in his hand. He thought about his promotion review next month. He thought about his savings. He thought about Marcus's smug smile in the office hallway. Then he looked back at Olivia. "Do you want out?" he asked. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "I don't want Marcus. I don't want this deal hanging over my head. I just didn't know how to say no without losing everything." That was enough. "Okay," Daniel said, her brows pulled together. "Okay? Then I'm your boyfriend." Her eyes widened. "You don't have to." "I know," he said. "I'm choosing to." Something in her shoulders softened. "Thank you," she whispered. He stepped a little closer in the narrow space. "But answer me one thing," he said quietly. "Is this just a stunt, or are we actually fighting?" Her jaw set. "We're fighting." "Good," he said, because he didn't bluff. When they returned to the table, her parents noticed immediately. Their hands were still linked. Charles's eyes narrowed slightly. "Everything settled?" he asked. "For now," Olivia replied. Daniel pulled her chair out, sat beside her, rested his arm lightly along the back of it. Not possessive, protective. "I'm not rushing her into anything," he said evenly. "She has enough pressure." Margaret watched him carefully. "You're serious," she said. "Yes, ma'am." Silence stretched across the table like a drawn wire. Charles leaned back. "You understand," he said slowly. "This won't end at dinner." Daniel met his gaze. "I figured." Under the table, Olivia's fingers tightened around his knee. The war had just begun. And Daniel had chosen his side. Snow fell harder by the time Daniel stepped out of the Sterling townhouse. The air was sharp and cold, biting at his lungs. Streetlights blurred behind the white curtain drifting down. He stood beside his car for a moment, the folded document still in his pocket, heavy as a stone. He finally unfolded it under the glow of the street lamp. The language was clean, legal, polished, but the meaning was ugly. If Olivia Sterling failed to announce a public engagement to an approved partner before the Winter Gala, her voting rights would transfer into a temporary trust, controlled by Charles Sterling and senior partner Marcus Hale. A single line at the bottom tightened Daniel's jaw. Reputational instability may be considered in evaluating leadership fitness. That was it, a leash disguised as governance. His phone buzzed in his hand, unknown number. "We need to talk about boundaries." "Marcus." Daniel stared at the message while snow melted across the windshield. Boundaries, Marcus meant territory. And Daniel had stepped into it. He barely slept. By sunrise, he was at the office, lights still dim on most of the floor. He liked early mornings. Numbers made more sense before people started pretending. At 7:18 a.m., Marcus Hale appeared in the glass doorway of Daniel's office. Perfect suit, perfect hair, smile just short of friendly. "Daniel," he said smoothly. "Early as always." "Morning." Marcus closed the door behind him and leaned casually against the desk. "I saw the family dinner photo," he said. Olivia looked happy. Daniel didn't respond. Marcus tilted his head. You understand how delicate this merger is, right? Optics matter. Stability matters. You mean control, Daniel said evenly. Marcus's smile thinned. I mean investors don't like surprises, he replied. And last night? That was a surprise. She's allowed to date, Daniel said. Marcus let out a quiet laugh. You think this is about dating? He asked softly. This is about billions of dollars, about legacy, about who sits at the top when the dust settles. He leaned closer. Walk away, he said. End this little performance. You keep your promotion, you keep wiring money home, you keep your place. Daniel's jaw tightened. And if I don't? Marcus's eyes cooled. Then you become a risk, and risks get removed. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. Marcus straightened his jacket. You're a smart kid from nowhere who built a few good models, he added. Don't confuse that with power. He walked out without another word. Daniel sat still long after the door closed. Then he did the only thing he trusted. He opened his laptop and started digging. He didn't hack anything. He didn't cross lines. He just read governance drafts, merger memos, advisory fee logs, off-site meeting expenses. Patterns emerged. Hotel bookings at the Broadmoor listed as strategy sessions, no minutes filed. Advisory payments routed through shell consulting firms tied loosely to Marcus. Dates lined up with changes in draft language. It wasn't proof yet. But it was smoke. By noon, his eyes burned. A message popped up from Olivia. Conference room C, 1 o'clock. Bring lunch. She was already there when he arrived. Suit back on. Hair pulled tight. Expression sharp again. Boss mode. But when the door shut, it slipped just a little. He came to see you, she said. Yeah. What did he say? That I'm a risk. She nodded once. That tracks. Daniel slid a folder across the table. I started pulling internal records, he said. Look at the dates. She flipped through the pages quickly. Her eyes moved faster than most people could read. Her mouth tightened. He's not just pushing the engagement, she murmured. He's shifting language to consolidate control. And hiding fees, Daniel added. Side sessions, shell firms. She sat back slowly. If this holds, she said quietly, he's been manipulating both my parents and the board. Do they know? Daniel asked. She gave a humorless smile. My father trusts numbers more than people. Marcus knows that. Snow tapped softly against the window beside them. You don't have to carry this alone, Daniel said. Her gaze softened for a second. I'm not, she replied. You're here. The words felt different this time, not strategic, personal. That evening he went back to her house. No parents, no candles, just soft light in the kitchen and 2 mugs of coffee on the table. She wore leggings and an old college sweatshirt. No makeup, hair tied loose. She looked tired, but steadier. I called my personal lawyer, she said, sliding another folder toward him. Not the firm's. Inside were marked-up contracts, notes in red pen. 3 clauses don't match the board-approved draft, she said. All favor Marcus if I'm deemed unstable or compromised. Compromised how? Daniel asked. She met his eyes. By dating someone beneath my title. There it was. Not subtle, not hidden. Daniel let out a slow breath. So this was never about love, he said quietly. It was about control, she replied. Silence settled between them. Then she squared her shoulders. I'm not backing down, she said. At the gala, I'm standing with you. Publicly. And then we drop everything on my father in front of the board. That's a war, Daniel said. I know. She stepped closer to him. If this fails, she added, Marcus will try to bury you with me. He thought about his apartment, his mother's medical bills, the fragile path he'd built. Then he thought about Marcus smiling while tightening a leash around Olivia's life. I can start over, Daniel said quietly. I can't live with watching him own you. Her breath caught. You're sure? Quote. I'm not here by accident, he said. I'm here because I choose you. The words hung in the air, not calculated, not strategic, true. Her eyes softened in a way he had never seen in the office. "Okay," she whispered, "then we fight together." They spent an hour planning where they would stand, what they would say, who would approach first. It felt cold on paper. But every time their hands brushed across the table, something warmer flickered underneath. At the door, as he left, she stopped him. "At the gala," she said quietly, "when they ask how serious we are, what will you say?" He didn't hesitate. "I'll say I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to." Her throat moved as she swallowed. "I'm not going to tell you to go," she said. Snow fell steady and thick as he walked to his car. His phone buzzed again. "See you at the gala." "Marcus." Daniel slipped the phone into his pocket. "Yeah," he muttered under his breath. "You will." The night ahead wasn't just about optics anymore. It was about truth. And he had already chosen his side. The winter gala felt less like a celebration and more like a courtroom with chandeliers. The ballroom at the Broadmoor shimmered in gold light. Crystal glasses, white linen, a band playing something soft and expensive. People laughed too loudly. Investors circled like careful birds. Daniel adjusted his tux jacket near the entrance mirror. It fit well. Olivia had arranged it herself. Then he saw her at the top of the staircase. Deep blue gown, clean lines, no glitter, strength instead of sparkle. Her hair fell over one shoulder, soft against bare skin. She looked calm. But he knew better. When her eyes found his, something steadied in both of them. "You ready?" he asked quietly when she reached him. "No," she said, "but I'm going in anyway." Her fingers slipped into his. They walked into the ballroom together. Heads turned. Conversations paused. And near the bar, Marcus Hale stopped smiling. "Olivia," Marcus said smoothly as they approached. "Daniel. Didn't expect you to last this long." "Get used to it," Daniel replied calmly. Marcus's jaw tightened just slightly. "Optics," he said, glancing at their joined hands. "Interesting choice." "My choice," Olivia answered. Her father appeared moments later, tuck sharp, face unreadable. "We need to talk," Charles said quietly. "Not alone," Olivia replied. Daniel didn't step back. The tension between the three men hummed like a wire pulled too tight. Before anyone could push further, the MC tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you could take your seats. The Sterling family will address the merger." The room shifted toward the stage. Charles leaned close to Olivia. "If you're bringing something tonight," he said low, "bring it now." She looked at Daniel. He pulled the slim folder from inside his jacket. They stepped into a private lounge off the ballroom. Low lighting. Closed door. Margaret entered behind them. Marcus followed without asking. "Leave," Olivia said firmly. "I have every right." "You don't," Daniel cut in. Marcus stayed. "Fine." Daniel laid the documents on the small glass table. "Hotel records," he said evenly. "Advisory payments routed through consulting shells tied to Marcus. Draft language changes that shift Olivia's voting power under reputational risk. Quote. Charles flipped through the pages. Margaret leaned over his shoulder. Marcus laughed lightly. "Circumstantial noise." Olivia stepped forward. "My personal attorney reviewed the contracts," she said. "The language does not match what the board approved." Charles's expression changed slowly, from confusion to calculation to anger. "Is this true?" he asked Marcus. Marcus's smooth smile cracked for the first time. "You're going to trust an analyst and your daughter's little boyfriend over me?" he snapped. "She's compromised. She's distracted. He's influencing her." Daniel didn't flinch. "You tried to trap her," he said quietly. "You tried to force an engagement so you could hold her votes." Marcus stepped forward. "And you," he hissed, "are in over your head." Daniel shifted just enough to stand between him and Olivia, not aggressive, solid. "You threatened my job," Daniel continued calmly. "You sent messages to scare me off. That's not strategy, that's control." For a split second, it looked like Marcus might swing. The door opened. Head of Compliance stood there with two senior directors behind him. "Charles." the compliance officer said. "We need to speak with Mr. Hale immediately." Silence filled the room. Charles didn't look away from Marcus. "You'll hand over every file," he said flatly. "If you refuse, we assume guilt." Marcus's face drained of color. "You're making a mistake," he said. "No," Margaret replied quietly from behind them. "We already did." Marcus was escorted out. The air felt different, lighter, and heavier. Olivia exhaled slowly and sank into a chair. Her hands were shaking now. "That just happened," she whispered. Daniel sat on the edge of the table in front of her. "You stayed," she said, looking up at him. "I told you," he replied. "I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to." Tears filled her eyes but didn't fall. "I'm not telling you to go," she said. Margaret stepped closer. "For what it's worth," she said carefully, "I misjudged you." She looked at Daniel. "You don't scare easily." "No, ma'am." She nodded once. "Small, real, good." The announcement on stage changed. There was no glowing praise of a perfect merger. Instead, there was a statement about a temporary leadership review and a commitment to transparency. Marcus did not return to the ballroom. The music started again. Whispers replaced applause. By the tall windows overlooking the snow-covered gardens, Daniel and Olivia stood together. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. "Saying yes to dinner?" he asked. She nodded. He thought about his job, his savings, the risk. Then he looked at her, not for a second. She stepped closer. "In that case," she said softly, "I should probably stop calling you my fake boyfriend." His heart kicked. "Yeah?" he asked. She reached up and adjusted his bow tie gently. "My boyfriend," she said. No trick, no strategy, just truth. He rested his hands lightly at her waist. "That sounds better," he murmured. She rose onto her toes and kissed him. Not dramatic, not for show. Warm, steady, certain. When they pulled back, her forehead rested against his chest. "This won't be simple," she whispered. "I don't want simple," he said. "I want real." She smiled against him. "Then that's what we build." Weeks later, Marcus was gone. Internal emails used words like misconduct and breach of trust. The merger moved forward under new terms. Olivia secured her seat on the board with full voting power. No hidden clauses. No traps. Daniel's promotion was delayed, then reinstated. A few coworkers treated him like he'd walked through fire. He had. On a quiet Saturday afternoon, Daniel sat on his old couch in his small apartment. The cushions still dipped in the middle. A plant by the window leaned toward survival. From the kitchen came the smell of coffee. Olivia padded out in one of his t-shirts and leggings, holding 2 mugs. She curled beside him like she'd always belonged there. "My parents want to come to dinner next week," she said. "Here?" he asked, glancing at the mismatched chairs. "Here," she smiled. "No contracts, no strategies, just dinner." He laughed softly. "You going to introduce me the same way?" he teased. "Drop the word boyfriend like a bomb?" She set her mug down and leaned into his shoulder. "No," she said. She looked up at him. "This time it won't be a trick." Her fingers laced through his. "It'll be the truth." She rested her head against his chest. "This is Daniel," she murmured softly, almost practicing. "My boyfriend. The man who stood between me and someone who thought he owned my future. The man who chose me." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "And the man who isn't going anywhere." She smiled. In the end, his boss had tricked him into dinner at her place. But he was the one who chose to stay. If you believe stories still matter, go ahead and hit subscribe. Stories Beyond the Porch. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel.